Thanks everyone for joining us this evening for this information session. Welcome everyone to the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program information session. My name is Karen Straza and I'm a public health analyst at RTI International. And I also serve as a task lead for the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. So just a little background, RTI is an independent nonprofit dedicated to improving the human condition. We provide research, development, and technical services to local, state, and federal governments, nonprofits, and commercial clients worldwide. And within RTI, the Grantmakers Program is held by the Transformative Research Unit for Equity, affectionately known as TRUE, and that division transforms traditional research practices and mindsets to reimagine and create systems that advance equity and social justice. RTI is responsible for supporting the EPA Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program for Regions 4 and 7 and the National Central. Joining me today is my colleague and a colleague from the EPA Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program, Christine Bevick. I'm going to turn it over to her to begin the overview of the program. There will be other colleagues from TCGM and also from the TIC-TAC that will be available to answer questions later. Today's session will also be recorded and available for replay. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine.
All right, thanks, Karen, and welcome everyone. And as mentioned, you can drop your questions into that Q&A, and we've added the upvoting so you can see what other questions have been submitted. And welcome Jeff Severin from the Heartland Environmental Justice Center as well. For those of you who are still coming up to speed with your acronyms, we're going to be using quite a few of them, so we're going to try and define them as we go. TIC-TAC is the term for the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers. So with that, we'll jump into our next slide and just kind of highlight what we're going to do today. So as Karen mentioned, my name is Christine Bevick. I serve as the Deputy Program Director for TCGM here at RTI. That helps to support our role as grant maker. But today, by the time we log off, we want you to be able to share that high-level description, be able to understand this opportunity for your region and your organization, be able to understand how to use that funding notice that was released to prepare your application, determine how best to request application assistance from wherever you might be, from both of our represented TIC-TACs today, and of course, where to go to request more information. So with that, we will dive in. Next slide. And with a quick overview of the program. So if you have not been able to join us for one of our past sessions, the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program was introduced by EPA. It's one of their largest investments in climate and environmental justice activities. The goal of the program is threefold. First is to support capacity building through assessment, planning, and project development. Second is to increase efficiency and reduce those barriers for organizations that have been less able to access federal grant funding. So this is essentially a first step program for many organizations that are seeking federal funds and providing that opportunity to access those. And our third piece here is, the third pillar here is to encourage meaningful involvement of community members in the decision-making process so that this is driven for communities by communities. So all three of those aspects are represented today in this program. Next slide. As Karen mentioned, this is as a grant maker, we serve, RTI serves as the grant maker for National Central for Region 4, and we also provide support to Region 7. So if your state is not highlighted there, we are happy to also help connect you with your local grant maker as well. This work is based within our transformative, research unit for equity or TRUE. But we don't do this work isn't done in isolation, and we are working with our partners at the Southern Environmental Law Center, North Carolina Central University, the National Center for Healthy Housing, University of Kentucky, and the International City County Management Association. So this work is done in coordination and collaboration with our statutory partners to make this program possible. Next slide. Eligibility is always one of our top questions about who is this program intended for and who's eligible to receive funding under TCGM. This program is really geared towards nonprofit organizations, community-based and grassroots nonprofit organizations. We're also accepting applications from philanthropic and civic organizations, and this includes faith-based organizations as well as tribal governments, federally and state recognized, and intertribal consortia. Local governments are when we say local governments, that is in the notice of funding opportunity that is limited to municipalities below 50,000, and there's a rationale for that limitation there. So it's not intended for states or federal governments to apply. We also welcome Native American organizations, and institutes of higher education are eligible to apply. Individuals, for-profit businesses, and state governments are not eligible to apply. So also listed in the notice of funding opportunity are those that are deemed ineligible to receive funding under this opportunity. Next slide. All right, so for this program, we actually have 4 different funding opportunities for this. There's both competitive and non-competitive. The competitive consists of assessment projects, planning projects, and development projects. And you can see that those begin at $150,000 for 1 year. Projects, the planning projects can be up to $250,000 for 1 to 2 years. And development projects that go up to $350,000 for 2 year projects. Those are ceilings for those awards. So if you have a project that is less but fits under that tier, you're welcome to submit. We also offer a non-competitive award, and that also will dive into that a little bit later. But these grants are really intended for those organizations that are just starting out. So it's less of the project focus that the tier awards are, but more to allow those organizations to build those foundations to move forward to pursue additional funding. These are not sequential awards, so you can apply for a tier 3 followed by a tier 1, or you can apply for a tier 1 and then move to a tier 3 if the project period allows for that. And we'll get into that a little bit more. All right. So what we have, everyone always wants to know, it's like, okay, the notice of funding opportunity is out. When do I need to get my application in? And so for this program, we're accepting applications on a rolling basis. So therefore, organizations can choose when they want to apply. So when you're ready, you can submit, and the system remains open until that final last day of April 30th, 2027. The decisions, though, are announced quarterly. So each quarter, once the submission, the target date passes, so after January 31st, all the applications that we've received to that point are then reviewed, and the determinations are made by our community advisory boards as to whether to fund or not fund. The responses are returned to the applicants, and the next target date to submit for funding is April 30th. So if at first you don't succeed, we do encourage you to try again. So they have several dates that are also flagged for the October 31st of next year, 2025. This is going to be the last date for those projects that have a 2-year project period. And that is a stipulation of the source of funding for this, which is under the Inflation Reduction Act. So it comes with a stopwatch where once the funding project period begins, those projects must be concluded within a specific time window. So for 1-year projects, all of those, if you want to pursue those, Please get those in before October 31st, 2026. And then if you have are pursuing a foundational or a shorter project award, project that's going to last 6 months, last date to submit for that is April 30th. So with that, we are going to have some Q&A. So if there's more clarification that's needed around those dates, please go ahead and drop them into the Q&A. All right, so after submission, these are going to go through the initial administrative review that's intended to be a quick turnaround for all applications. So if there are any immediate blockers to funding and review, we want to let you know as soon as possible on those so that you don't have to wait until the end of that quarter to be able to receive that feedback. The remainder of the review process is community guided and community driven in terms of making those decisions around who and which projects will be funded. Next slide. All right, so what do we mean by guided by community members? I've mentioned the community advisory boards, and so these are panels of individuals that will be reviewing the application and making the decision about who gets the funding. And we can talk a little bit more about that during the Q&A if there's questions there. Tatiana Bustos, who's joined us this evening, is able to answer those questions. And then for our reviewers, every application that comes in under the competitive will also receive a review from our external reviewers. So these are you could be a reviewer for any of these applications. What we're looking for is for you to bring your expertise, whether it's technical or professional or lived, to help assess the feasibility and alignment of these projects that are being proposed and the overall benefit to communities. Now, if you've submitted a project for a particular review period, we're managing the conflict of interest, and we will ask you to review a future cycle just to help avoid that conflict of interest there. But we help work with you on that one. In addition to our community advisory boards and our reviewers, we are also very pleased to be able to work with our tribal liaisons in creating those linkages with tribes and Indigenous people to make sure that those funding opportunities remain accessible and we can answer any questions that may come up. Next slide. All right, so the other part is this is only a 1-hour session, and there's lots of questions and there's lots to unpack within that funding opportunity notice. So what we're going to be offering in the new year is a series of webinars. So it's 4 parts. Part 1, webinar 1, is going to be focused on those non-competitive awards, on what those are, who should be applying, what types of projects are going to be funded through that process. Webinar 2 starts the essentially introduction into the application. So it's going to review in detail all the questions that you'll be asked to describe your organization. So this is essentially the first part of the application. Webinar 3 is project focused and will help you with developing your project for competitive awards being Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, including those community and geographic related questions. And then Webinar 4, we close out with the nitty-gritty around preparing your proposal budget, looking at all of those categories and the level of detail that we're looking for those. So again, as we move forward through this evening, please drop your questions in there. We can see those. The eight questions are still open. We are also answering those live, so you can click on the Answered tab to be able to see the answers for those as well. Next slide. All right, so digging into the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So this is available online through the Region 4, Region 7, and our National Central websites. You can access all 3 of those through our main landing page, which simply directs you to whichever one you need to get to. Next page. When you open up the NOFO, first off, do not be intimidated by the length of this opportunity. Yes, it is 40 pages, but we've designed it to really walk you through the process of applying. We didn't want to simply give, hey, here's 5 pages and leave questions. What we wanted to do was to be able to get you ready so that you're all set up for success and ready and able to apply. The two main sections here that I wanted to highlight is the apply section, which really goes into and breaks down the parts of the application. In here, it goes through every single application question that you're going to be asked to respond to. It's going to cover the applicant information, the project information, the budget information, which, as you just noticed, those are the 3 webinars we'll have in January. The submission questions, probably the easiest section. But all in all, we'll be able to help you and sort through how much time it takes to go through each of those sections, and how much, and what you should be looking for. In addition, the NOFO is also going to help you set up your account in SM Apply. This is our application management platform. If you click on the link today, you can go in and actually create your account now, so you can get that started. You can also, once the application opens, right now we're scheduled for Monday. We kindly ask that you bear with us. What we're trying to do is make sure that this process is as smooth as possible. So if it's not open at 12:01 on Monday the 16th, know that it is because we are trying to eliminate some bugs for you so that your application experience hopefully is not as bumpy as it might have been. In the section also, you're already going to be able to see what are the questions that I'm going to need to be asked. What do I have to respond to? So even if you can't get in to create your application, the NOFO is going to lay it out for you and how to answer those questions. The other piece is once you push that submit button, what we've wanted to do here is to lay out what you can expect after that happens. So how long are you waiting? What information are you going to get back? And I do see the question over there of what's going to happen in that review process. How many steps are there? When do I get feedback? Do I get feedback? And the answer is yes. So next slide. All right, so we've covered these. So this is going to be the project information section. This is where you're going to break down what project you're pursuing, so you can decide which tier is going to best fit your community and the activities that you need to carry out. So these are project focused for those competitive awards. Again, the foundational support projects are those that are intended to build organizational capacity. So if you are a smaller organization, this is your first time, we really encourage you to look at those, look at the non-competitive and the questions that are associated with that, because those are designed to help you build and prepare for the competitive opportunities under this program, as well as future programs. Next slide. All right, so this is all about making it easier for you. So again, the goal being to reduce the time and the effort it takes to complete the application. Most questions in here, so unlike some of the other federal opportunities, most of the questions that are for this program, for Region 4, Region 7, and National Central, the way we've set it up is that these questions are multiple choice or short answer. And by short answer, we mean 500 words. So some of them are 250 words, but the whole goal is that this is not intended to be a writing test or to challenge any persuasive writing. This is so that you can give us the information that we need, whether it's in paragraph format, bulleted format. You could try for haikus, but we probably will come back with asking for some more clarification on those. We're also looking for detailed description. As we mentioned, we wanted to provide a detailed description of the information that we're requesting in these questions. So those are provided in each of the sections of that notice of funding opportunity. And the other part is very few of us are able to really sit down and knock this out in one sitting. So it's designed so that you can get the notifications, you can save your work, you can return it anytime. The other part is you don't have to do this by yourself. So you can add multiple contributors, excuse me, to your application. So if you have other members of your organization that want to be able to log in and be able to help fill things out, or other collaborators, if you're partnering with other organizations, you can also invite them to help contribute to your application. So you're not on your own and it's not all in one person. As I mentioned, the email notifications, you can decide how much communications you get. You can get the direct messages from us, updates on the activity. So what that'll do is after you push submit, anytime there's a change in your application, you're going to get a notification. So there's less guesswork. And then again, the invitation requests, if you're getting invites to support others, you'll receive those. And then also deadlines, reminders for applications. So when those target dates start to come up, we're going to give you at least a 2 weeks notice on that. So you can prepare and decide if you're going to be submitting for that round or if you're going to hold and submit after that date. All right, next slide. All right, so this is a snapshot of one of the pages from the Notice of Funding Opportunity. What you can see is exactly that. It breaks down on this first piece of, we've added these boxes of what you need to know. So you can always look for those of what is the most essential information that I shouldn't forget, that I shouldn't lose. Those are in the boxes there. The green box here is just that example of, you're going to be asked for the name and address of your organization. And so this just provides those instructions. Use your full name, don't use acronyms, but we've laid it out for you there. And then also in several places, you'll see the little padlock. This is for information that the reviewers don't see. So for the reviewers and for the cabs, they don't need your complete mailing address. That's for administrative purposes on our end. What they will see is the zip code, so they can see how that matches up also with those underserved and disadvantaged communities that are identified through the IRA disadvantaged communities data layer and the CGEST tool. So there's links also into those resources as well to identify if your community or zip code falls into that area. All right, and at the bottom of every page is how you can reach back to us for help. So we are here, we've got a whole team to be able to support you through this process. If it's not the TCGM team, we've got the TIC-TAC teams that are here that'll be able to support you. You can request that at any time. Our typical turnaround for those is going to be 1 to 2 business days. You can also call and we'll give you a call back as well. All right, next slide. Okay, so here's the piece that a lot of folks have been interested in, which is the non-competitive foundational support awards. How are they different? Because we've got one application through SM Apply. You'll go in through the program, but once you select what project you're going for, the first question will be that drop down of, are you going for foundational support tier 1, 2, or 3? If you select foundational, that's where you're going to start seeing differences in your application. It reduces the number of questions down from 17 down to 8 with a strong focus on the capacity building. So as much more focused on those. So the level of detail that we're asking for these non-competitives is really focused on the organization as opposed to some of the broader community pieces. The other difference, which is what makes it non-competitive, is that these applications move directly over to the CAB for determination. They do not receive an external review on this one, so the CABs are the ones determining funding or not funding. All right, next slide. And again, we've got a webinar coming up that second week of January that's going to focus entirely on those foundational awards. All right, under the what happens next, we've touched on this, the 4-step process. We've got initial administrative review. So this is going to be that first piece around feedback. So as we're going through your application, we are going to, the TCGM team, the grants management team, the application management team are going to be looking to make sure that you can get your funding. So if there's any blockers that might say, oh my goodness, we can't, we're going to have trouble or we're going to have challenges getting you funding, we're already within, our goal is to get a response to you within 10 days of your submission as to whether or not there are going to be any challenges. And those are going to happen before before that deadline. So if you turn in your application January 15th, then you're likely to get that initial administrative review completed before the 31st. Now, if you wait until the 31st, you're still going to get it within the 10 days after that. So have a happy Valentine's Day with some administrative review feedback. We'll let you know if you're advancing or if there's any questions or challenges. So what we're doing is we're providing that opportunity very early on if there's any need for corrections, if there's any need for additional information. We might be minor or it might be something a little bit larger. We also see this as the opportunity to refer you over to the TikToks if you need it. One thing that that here is that we are looking for organizations to have their unique entity identifier. So if your organization does not have a UEI, so previously it was your DUNS number, and at the moment I'm sorry, I can't break down that acronym for you, but sam.gov is where those the unique entity identifiers are located. They've replaced the DUNS number. So that's what your organization will need. You can still apply and submit your application if you're working towards your UEI. There's an option in there if you don't know if your organization has a UEI. And we'll go look for it and see if it's there. And if we can't find it, then we'll go ahead and make sure that you connect with the TikTok in your area to help reach that and receive that identifier. So they'll work with you through that process. So you need that UEI by the time we get up to a final determination. So if you're selected for funding, that's the time that we want to make sure that you guys have a UEI so that you can receive your federal funds. And that's going to open the door to a lot of other programs further down the road as well. External review, we've touched on this. You can volunteer to serve as a reviewer in this piece. Tier 2 and Tier 3 may receive a technical review. That way, that provides that additional expertise in there. The non-competitive skip this process and go straight over to the Community Advisory Board for determination. They're going to look at all the applications for that their CAB is assigned. They'll look at the reviews that came in from the community reviewers. They're going to talk about the applications, but they're the ones that are going to be making all the funding decisions. So RTI is the grant maker. We don't have the funding decision. Our goal is to make sure that you as an organization are able to receive that funding, and we want to make sure that that's possible in every way. So identifying what are some of the blockers there, so that when the Community Advisory Board gets your project and your proposal, they're able to say, hey, this is great, like let's support this. The notice of funding decision is a funded or not funded. Regardless of what that determination is, you're going to receive guidance on the next steps. So if you're funded, then you're going to get instructions on how do I get funds? What is the next step? Like, where do we go from here? This is great. When can I celebrate? Or if you're not funded, then we're going to provide that feedback. We're going to provide the guidance on, what was it about your application that the CAB decided not to fund? What are the next steps? So again, as I mentioned, if at first you don't succeed, we want to encourage you to resubmit in the next target date for submission, or if it's going to take 2 dates to do that. And we'll likely refer you also to the TikTok so that you're also not working on your own to address any of the issues there. So unlike a lot of programs where you may or may not even receive that information about being funded or not funded, with this, we're going to provide that information about, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the reason. This is what the reviewers were looking to see more of. Or could you address this? Or could you, this is where the CAB needs to see more information. So that guidance is going to come back to you as an applicant. And then in total, we're going to try and get this done all within 3 months, so that the first funding decisions are going to come out before that next target date. So that way, if it's a quick turnaround, you can turn it around and resubmit for the next review period. Next question, next slide. All right, so again, here are those target windows, those target dates to submit for funding. We're not calling them deadlines because the only deadline is really April 30th, which is when the last day when we can accept applications. So April 30th of 2027. So not 2025, 2027. So you have until then to get your application in if it's a 6-month project. Those October 31st dates for next year and the year after, if you've got 2-year or 1-year projects in there. But these are dates because we want to encourage organizations that have not previously applied for funding to be able to work towards goals and dates. Because sometimes with other federal programs, many of those are very hard dates. And if you miss those, then you're going to miss those funding opportunities. Here, we want to make sure that you have every opportunity to be able to receive funding under this. All right, and those decisions are going to be announced quarterly. One of the other pieces is always with the rolling basis, and this is something that I've run into in the past too in my own experience, is great, it's a program on a rolling basis. Is all the money going to be gone after the first round? And the answer is probably no. That's going to be up to the cabs, but that's a lot of funds for us to push out the door very quickly. In total, we're looking at funding over 500 awards through this program. In total over these 3 years that are going to go within Region 4, Region 7, and then also National Central. So whenever we have decisions that are announced, what we'll also say is here's how much funding was obligated. So if we have 2 awards and they're $250,000 tier 2s, then we awarded $500,000 in funds. And what we're going to be able to share is here's how much funding is remaining, as well as here are the types of awards, here's the breakdown, here's the topics, so you can receive that information. One of the questions we had earlier was whether there is a set number of awards for each tier, and the answer is no. So I know we're looking at time here, and I want to make sure our TICTAC colleagues have an opportunity to share those pieces. So next slide. Perfect timing. All right, Karen, do you want to share a little bit about React for EJ?
Yes, thank you so much, Christine. And I'm just going to go on to the next slide. I'm excited to share with you all the how the TICTACs are supporting communities in applying for the Grantmakers program. And I'm going to talk specifically about the services for the TICTAC in Region 4 and how we'll work with you all to provide support. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Severin in Region 7, who's here, and he's going to talk specifically about the work that how Region 7 TICTAC will support you all. So React for EJ stands for the Resource for Assistance and Community Training in Region 4 for Environmental Justice. So we refer to our TICTAC as React for EJ, and through our network of state and national partners, we provide technical support to communities working on environmental justice issues. And RTI International and the Environmental Protection Network are regional partners in this effort, and we work closely with state partners in each of the 8 states in Region 4. And so you can see on this map, we show sort of where they are in each state. And how they are situated. And we also work across the 6 federally recognized tribal nations located in Region 4 and support, of course, the state recognized tribes as well. So next slide. So specifically for technical assistance for the Thriving Communities Grantmakers Program, as Christine showed you on that roadmap or river of the different webinars that will be presented, we'll be helping to support that effort and also provide some other opportunities that will help you all get applications ready for submission. So, and specifically, those are on this slide. You'll see the weekly office hours, the topical webinars that Christine mentioned. weekly application work sessions, and bi-weekly SAM.gov registration sessions that will be led by our partner Environmental Protection Network. So the office hours will be held once a week. They're group-based, they're virtual sessions via Zoom where questions are answered in real time. Registration is required so that we can learn in advance what individual needs are prior to the session. And you can register on the events page at react4ej.org. The first office hour that we're going to have is Monday, December 23rd. So that'll be the week after the application portal is open, and that's from 12 to 1 Eastern and 12 to 1 Central, 1 to 2 Eastern. So the topical webinars, which Christine already talked about, are going to begin in January, and they'll consist of those 4 different topics that she mentioned. And they'll start with the topics around applying for non-competitive awards and also describing your organization. These sessions will all be recorded, and you'll register for these through for the Thriving Communities Grantmakers website. Then in addition to those webinars, we'll have weekly application work sessions. So those will start in January too. And these virtual sessions will allow for group-based breakout sessions focused on the specific sections of the applications that Christine mentioned. And so that you'll have a chance to sort of, with a facilitator, actually walk through that piece of the application and work on it together. You can register soon for those at our website, react4ej.org, on the events page. And then finally, the Environmental Protection Network, which is a regional partner with us in this effort, they will be hosting SAM.gov office hours. And those office hours will be every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 Eastern, 1 to 2 Central. And these are virtual sessions that will provide help whether you're starting, continuing, or completing the SAM.gov process. And pre-registration for these is required. The next one will be held next week, December 18th, from 2 to 3 Eastern, 1 to 2 Central, and you can register on their website, on EPN's website. And if any of you find it at all difficult to attend these sessions because of timing, technology challenges, or other issues, please let us know via our website, react4ej.org, or at our 1-800 number so that we can find a better way to accommodate your needs. And the next slide. Great. So these are just sharing some of the other ways in which our state partners and here at RTI and with EPN we can help is through 3 sort of big bucket areas. So understanding and figuring out ways to develop partnerships, identify partners, connect with EJ groups, engage community, and find funding by connecting with funding agencies. Then there's also work that we do on project development, generating project ideas, grant writing skills, navigating grant systems, identifying EJ issues, and working with using different EJ tools. And then we can also assist with connecting communities to subject matter experts in areas such as environmental quality, be it air and water quality, environmental health, use of GIS and mapping, and clean energy adoption. So these are the types of services we don't just provide to TCGM, but these are available for communities for any opportunities that they are applying for. And the next slide. So the way to reach out to us individually, first of all, we do encourage applicants to access the webinars, our office hours, and the work sessions specifically for the TCGM opportunity. But then you can also reach out to us via our website here. In the corner, you can, it's react4ej.org again. You can click on the request help, and we'll connect you with someone who can answer any question or address a request that you have. Or you can also call us at our 866 number, 866-309-4559. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff Severin over in Region 7 so he can share the work that the TICTAC there is going to be able to provide you all.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks all for joining us this evening. My name is Jeff Severin. I'm the Associate Director for the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. We're based in Region 7, and that includes Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and any of the adjoining Indigenous nations. So if that's where you are this evening, we are your Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. So next slide. Um, a lot of what was just said applies to us as well, because we all have similar roles, but do things just a little bit differently across the nation in terms of the way that TIC-TACs operate. But we do provide a range of services to support folks who are working towards applying for grants, whether that's this grant or other funding opportunities. And we really try to employ a customized approach to make sure that every community and organization, their unique needs are addressed through the services that we provide. Of course, like I said, the focus is working towards funding and helping folks with grant applications. We can't write those grants for you, but we can provide a range of services throughout that process. So it could look like providing some support on your project planning, budget development, helping you identify those priorities that you want to fund, just getting organized and connected with folks in your area that would be valuable partners to include in your process. We also provide technical assistance or expertise on a range of topics through our partners network and our staff as well. And can help with kind of education outreach initiatives as well. Next slide. So this is kind of what it looks like to work with us. Again, every process is a little bit different, but the first step is going to our website and filling out a short questionnaire. You can find that at heartlandej.org. There's a contact us button, and that form will open up for you there to provide a few details about yourself, your organization, the challenge that you're wanting to address. And when you do that, if you're specifically looking for support with TCGM, you can click on that as one of the options of things that you're looking for specific support on. So once that's completed, we get you assigned to a staff person or one of our partners, depending on where you're at, who will reach out and do a intake conversation just to learn more about what you're interested in, what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are. And from that point, really develop that customized plan. If it's just specific to this grant, we'll look at kind of laying out a timeline for getting your application together, see what kind of additional resources you might need to help plan for that. But if it's beyond this grant and you're looking for additional services, we can help outline some additional things, whether that's connecting you to other resources, connecting you to other organizations, or doing some strategic planning, whatever it is that's needed most at that time to get you moving forward. And then we stick around. We don't want to just kind of get you started and walk away, but we want to make sure that we're with you through that process, through that application completion, but also to help with any sort of post-award work, to help you with grant management and getting that project going. Next slide. Here's how to connect with us. Our website is the best place to start, heartlandej.org. Again, go to that site, click on contact us if you're ready to start working directly with us. You can also, at the bottom of our website, and it probably pops up when you go visit the site, join our email list so that you'll get updates as we go along. And of course, social media, we're on Facebook and LinkedIn. A couple things I want to add just to make sure that we're sharing a few details about Grantmaker specifically. One of the things that we have started doing is a general meet and greet. So their next one is planned for next Tuesday at 9 a.m. You can go to our website and register for that. It's just an opportunity to learn a little bit more than you will this evening about who we are and how we operate. We'll also be hosting kind of one-on-one office hours, so there'll be a place that you can sign up to get a quick 15-minute conversation with staff or a little bit more time to dig into specifics of your project. Starting in February, we'll be doing a workshop series that's very targeted at providing that space and time to walk through the application, but also do some of the writing right there on site and get feedback from staff and from others in the room. So be looking for that if you're in our region. And then finally, we are also partners with the Environmental Protection Network. So take a look at the resources that are provided there. In addition to that SAM.gov work, they have an AI tool that's a great resource if you struggle a little bit to get started writing. And they'll have some other office hours and resources available on their site as well. So I think that covers my portion.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Karen. So what we've done is just here, and we're going to dive into our Q&A with the time that we have remaining of what you can be doing now. So thinking about your project needs, what do you need to do to address the issue in your community? Read the notice of funding opportunity. Sit down, go through a section, break it down, and read through it. You can check to see if your organization has a UEI, and if you're not sure, or if you find out that you don't, reach out to your local TIC-TAC. You can start brushing up on budgeting. And as we've been putting into the chat, make sure you're getting those email updates, or if you're not getting those email updates, please let us know as well. So we want to know whether or not those are coming through, and you can always email us at info@thrivingenvironments.org. All right, next slide. Oh, Q&A. Yay.
Hey, yeah, so we can just jump right into the Q&A. There are some questions that have been answered, but there are a couple here that are still out there. So one is that about the specific criteria for organizations to be eligible for the Tier 1 capacity building grant.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a specific criteria, and is there a definition to small organizations for the non-competitive?
So for this one, we're going to be reviewing this one in January during that webinar. The criteria is really, it's a combination of the background for your organization, as well as some quantitative as well as qualitative, but really whether or not your organization is severely capacity constrained, that decision is really going to be guided by our community advisory boards as well. So at this time, unfortunately, I can't say like, hey, if you meet X, Y, and Z, you're going to qualify, because what we don't want to do is to set forth that criteria, which would then limit those organizations that are still considered severely capacity constrained but don't meet that definition. So that's why we've also left that open. The other part is that there are 11 grant makers in total. And one of the things we want to make sure is that across all of these programs, when we're talking about this non-competitives for severely capacity constrained organizations, we want to make sure that we also are all working towards the same definition as well. So that way, or Region 3's grant maker versus Region 4 that, just because they're on the opposite side of the state, that they're being held to different standards and different definitions. And that's what we want to avoid. So more details coming on that one. But if you're not sure, you can still go ahead and apply, and you'll get that feedback and recommendations that you're ready to move to a Tier 1, or if you're not eligible. So. Yeah.
So another kind of related question, will people be able to use their fiscal sponsor and their unique identity number for foundational funding?
Well, technically, EPA doesn't recognize fiscal sponsors, so it'll be that organization that has the UEI that will be considered the applying organization. So that is the answer to that question.
Okay.
So if the applying organization has a UEI, they may also have partners that they're working with. And that's information also about if you are working with partners and will be moving funds to them, that will also need budgets for those as well. And that's something we'll cover in that budget session about working with partners and those sub-agreements that you might have.
Thanks, Christine. Another one is around grant expenses. Do organizations have to pay grant expenses out of pocket first and then be reimbursed, or will they receive the funding up front and then invoice to show how they are spending it?
Yes and no. All right, and the answer to break that one down is that we had that these awards are set up both as they can be set up as a fixed price award where organizations are meeting milestones, where that first milestone could be have your kickoff, meet with your program officer, your project officer, meet with your grant coordinator, and those are who you'll be assigned whenever your organization is awarded. And that can be one of the first milestones. For the 350, for some of those other, the larger awards, most of those are going to be cost reimbursement. What we do recognize is that the level of capital needed for some of these costs and expenses are, not like a lot of organizations might have $50,000 sitting in the bank account being ready to spend on something. So that's where we're going to encourage you to work with your grant coordinator in advance to be able to set that up and be able to discuss those options because we can move to a fixed price where you have milestones where actually the reporting is much lower, or you can move over into or the cost reimbursable, and we can your grant coordinator will have additional information there. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. There was another question related to sort of budgeting. So someone asked about brush up on budgeting. It was one of the things that you could do. So does that mean sharpen accuracy of cost plans and estimates, or better understand budget components, formats, etc.?
All right. So in the NOFO, there are two federal examples that we provide. We provide the FAR and the SF. So those links are in there for those budget families. And what we mean by budget families is that if you click on those links, you're taken to the page that has all the example templates. It has all of the budget forms. It has some of the guidance to be able to walk through but how you can set up a budget for your project. So part of that is, how do you break down the costs for your project that you've proposed? Are you going to be, if you have if you're doing an initial assessment of soil samples, what are the costs that you're going to have? What are your personnel costs? There's 9 different budget categories that we're looking for. So thinking about what is going to go into the expenses associated with your project is what we mean by the kind of the brush up on the budgeting. If you've never written a budget before, then that's a really great time to familiarize yourself with that. The Environmental Protection Network, there's a couple of resources that have been dropped into the chat as well, can also support you on that. So in addition to that webinar, there's lots that you can be digging into at this point. So.
Great. So let's see, there was a question here about the population, the 50,000, and whether one was to clarify a local government that serves more than 50,000 people is ineligible for this funding. Is that correct?
That is one where with there's another answer under the answer category for where that 50,000 comes from. We are confirming, we saw that piece on there about the Public Housing Authority, which is a department within the government. What we're doing is we're seeking the clarification on that. But generally, what the intent of this is that, the city of Los Angeles is considered not a state government. Well, they are not small by any means. So it's really intended for more of those local and small governments. So we'll check with EPA on that piece there and how tight that CFR restriction is for that.
Great, thanks. So here's a question about the community advisory boards. are you still recruiting community members for the Community Advisory Board? How much will you be compensating them? Will you be compensating community members from disadvantaged communities who serve as reviewers? And I see that, Tatiana, you put a response here, but I thought it might be good to share with everyone.
Hi, thanks, Karen. Yes, I just wanted to reiterate, because this is such an important foundational component of this program are the Community Advisory Board members, the reviewers, and the tribal liaisons. So we are, we know that lived experiences are a form of expertise. And so I just wanted to make sure to be explicit about that folks will be compensated for the time that they're spending with this program. And CAB members will be paid $200 per meeting. Reviewers will be paid $100 per application, and the tribal liaisons also get compensation for the outreach activities. And so they are all being compensated to be part of this program. And if you are interested, please make sure to stay connected with us so that we can share ongoing updates on those roles. Thank you for letting me reiterate. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And do you want to say anything about the tribal liaisons? There's a question about recruitment
Yes.
for those.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, we are still recruiting for Region 7 and National Central. So again, if that is something that you are interested in learning more about and staying connected as we proceed with the application, please make sure to either email us or click the website form to stay connected with us so that we can share that information. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And then there was a question about, or a couple of questions related to concern about funding being expended and what will happen then.
Oh, that'd be so wonderful. It'd be one because that would mean that we've gotten 500 awards out the door. Now, I can't speak to the mental health and sanity of our grants management team, but that would be a wonderful challenge for us to have early on. With that, the given the volume, just the sheer volume of funding that's available through this, we may expend all the funds in the first year. But very unlikely that it's going to happen in this first round. So that is what we want to do is still encourage early applications. Don't wait. Get in there, submit your project, answer the questions, and get the feedback so you can resubmit if you're not selected for funding. So if at first you don't succeed, try again. That with every time we make a funding announcement, in terms of like awarded projects and those funding decisions are announced, we're also going to include that percentage of the funds that are expended. So you're going to know how much, with this first round, we've expended 5% of the funds available. We've expended 10%, or, we're at 75% because everyone was on top of everything and we received an outstanding number of proposals. So that information is going to come. And then you can also request that from info@thrivingenvironments.org. Right now, all of the funding is currently available. So we have 100% of funds available remaining to be expended. So for all regions. And to my knowledge, I don't believe that any grant maker has made any awards at this moment. So.
Thanks, Christine. And also there is a question here about technical assistance and whether it will cover the financial policies needed for federal grants. And I don't know if you want to speak on that from the TCGM side or.
Nope, but that's a good suggestion.
It's a good suggestion. I will say for the TIC-TAC, we have not really been involved in that type of technical assistance. I mean, we do have people that could give advice on that, but that's not something that we typically do. So we are at 8 o'clock. Do you want to close this out, Christine?
Yeah, so we do have a couple outstanding questions. We're going to try and answer those. One of the benefits is if you did not check the box to be anonymous, that means that we can actually email you back a response to your question. So we appreciate those. The dates for the January webinar, the first ones are going to be the 7th and 8th. And if you registered for this, you're going to get the registration for those webinars that are forthcoming. We're in the process of standing up those registration forms. In the meantime, as Tatiana mentioned, the Stay Connected, this is what the form looks like for Region 4. You enter in your name, your preferred email, your organization, and you can check those boxes if you're interested in applying for a grant, if you're interested in reviewing applications, serving on the community advisory board, or supporting promotion, and you can check all of those boxes, and we will greatly appreciate that. And thanks to Yewande for dropping all of our socials into the chat box there, so you can open the chat window and see where we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We've also got YouTube as well. You can check out our informational video there. That is also linked from all of our websites as well. Whew. Thank you all. This is great. We get so many good questions out of these, and it really helps us. So if you, after today, if there are more questions that you have, please email us. There's a contact us section. So you can see in the upper right, it's the purple button up there for contact us. You can send us your questions that way, or you can send them directly to info@thrivingenvironments.org, which I believe is on the next slide. Let's see. Yes, so you can get in touch with us. Those are the websites. Those are our emails. And if you were with us for the earlier session, you heard from Tony. I'm Christine, and Daniela Pineda is our program director. We've got 2 more sessions next week, so you are always welcome to come back and join us at that time. You can register online now, and enjoy your weekend and have a good evening. Thank you all.